Recently, the GST bill has been passed and the government is coming out with a notification. How it will have an impact on the society and on the consumers?
First thing, let us be very clear. What has been passed has been a constitutional enabling bill for a GST Act. The GST Act will be probably brought to the Parliament along with the budget. Until that time, there is no GST. What has been passed in the Parliament last month has been what is called as the enabling bill. Now, as far as the GST is concerned, I am very clear. It is yet another tax. And every tax will have its own pain points. Either you have taxes or reforms. You can't have tax reforms. So tax reforms by definition is an oxymoron. Now, GST, however, whatever may be somebody's reservation, is a welcome step. We need GST at this point in time, and GST is a welcome reform of this government of the day. But to assume that GST by itself will lead to 2% growth, will have nothing that will inhibit manufacturing in India, that will have no pain points, is all wishful thinking. For instance, those of us who are believing that there will be no check posts, yesterday's Economic Times carries out an article stating that the government is going to spend 4,000 crores on check posts upgradation to meet GST. So, if GST is going to come with check posts, so then you can understand it will have multiple rates. Now people were talking about single rate. Now it is being talked about in 6 buckets. One bucket for exemption, one bucket for exports, which will be zero rated. Then there will be 2% to 4% for gold, jewelry, bullion, etc. Then 12% for your primary goods, 18% or 20% as the case may be for your majority of the goods, which is called revenue neutral rate. And finally, we will have 40% for the luxury goods, which will be SUVs, ACs, fridges, and etc., etc. So we are returning back to the 1980s where we had 6 or 8 rates of excise duty. We will be more or less going back to the same area, and there will be classification problem, there will be clearances problem, there will be appeals, then there will be a tribunal, then there will be a high court, then there will be a Supreme Court. I don't see, given the proclivity of the bureaucracy to complicate things, that this will be a simple affair. And those who expect it to be a simple affair are going to be in for a huge disappointment.
How it will have an impact on a common man?
Common man will be affected primarily because the service tax that you pay on 15% may end up with 20-22%, which means inflationary. For instance, the cell phone or your household telephone bills that for which you pay a service tax of 15%, for your health insurance that you pay a service tax of 15%. All these things you will end up paying a higher rate of service tax. To that extent, it will be inflationary. Your chartered accountant fees will go up. Your other bills, wherever you are going to, restaurant bills may go up. All these things are indicative that there will be primarily an inflationary push. Probably, if the rate of cars are being determined at 18% or 20%, probably then it could be possible that the inflation and the rates of cars may come down. But definitely of your restaurant, of your insurance, of your chartered accountant, of your lawyer, all that you consume, your telephone, all these things will definitely go up.
But all the industry bodies hailing this GST. But you are telling in a contrary.
See, the problem with the industry is they have necessarily to say this in front of the camera and welcome it. You must ask them behind the camera what they think about GST, what they think about the bureaucracy to implement, ability of the bureaucracy to implement the GST. And if you find slowly people are realizing that it is going to be fixed rates and there is going to be check posts, now you find out from the industry body what do they think about it. And industry bodies are no benchmark because they always welcome and then only they go about cursing you. So industry is not a benchmark, sir, for anything, and that should not be taken as any benchmark. And we are going to bring in huge amount of people who are in the roadside barber or the roadside grocer into the net. They may get into the income tax net. So what would eventually happen thanks to GST is that the government may end up with more money, but the household savings may dip. Households may transfer their wealth to the government, and households are the most productive users of wealth to government, which will be the most ineffective user of wealth. So that is my primary worry, that the savings rate may go down, the capital formation may go down, To that extent, growth may get impeded.
Anyway, it has come to stay. It has been constitutionally accepted, and now all the bills are going
Yes, it has come to stay. Yes, it has come to stay, no doubt about it. But I only wish the government does its homework well to address these pain points.
The negative impact, how it can be avoided?
See, at 18%, 20% revenue neutral rate, whatever that they are talking about, is pure hogwash, because states are going to get huge amount of money from services. And I don't know why GST should not be fixed at around 16%. First thing is your rate fixation must be single. Whether you manufacture a hairpin or whether you manufacture a luxury car, finally it should be 16%. If it is not 16%, you have to have check post. If you have check post, then the whole idea of GST is dynamited from within. 2, if you are going to have 16%, it will control inflation. If you are going to have 20%, 22% as some people are demanding, then you are going to have a huge inflationary cascade which the central government will have to bear when it comes to the housing in 2019. 3, there must be quick addressal of all pain points. For example, when on 30th August we upload the income tax returns of just 2 million individuals, we find that the system is unable to cope. But when it comes to GST and we have to do 2 to 3 million, probably much more of invoices uploading probably every hour. And I don't know how the systems are going to cope up, given the fact that connectivity is going to be a huge problem in several parts of the country where even power supply is dodgy. So to all these things, how are we going to cope up and how these things are going to be streamlined? And let me put it very bluntly. We are having a problem with Karnataka in terms of Kaveri water dispute. We don't have a mechanism to settle interstate disputes. And how is it if there is going to be any dispute between two states, say between Bihar and say Uttar Pradesh on a sharing of the spoils in GST? How is it and it's going to be reconciled? And if it is irreconcilable, what if? Who will be the final arbitrator? Who will finally pass the order? And what if the Supreme Court order or the GST Council's order is being violated?
Suppose if all the issues are addressed, if the rate of taxation is less than 16% and the technology is improved, do you suggest GST is the better solution for India?
Sir, I fully agree with you. It will partially mitigate and it will be one of the most welcome steps, reforms that the government has taken the last 70 years of our independence. Having said that, please understand in 1991 when we started talking about reforms, and Manmohan Singh's great budget of 1991 and 1992 talked about taxation reforms. Talk to any tax lawyer or a chartered accountant. The tax laws today are 1 billion times more complicated than what it was in 1991. So the proclivity of the bureaucracy to complicate even the most simplest of things is legendary. If history is of any indication, the fact is GST will be a very complicated law implemented with great amount of bureaucratic fanfare, and the political class will be the worst sufferer of a sloth bureaucracy, which is now bordering on extortionist means to recover tax.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.